on the announcement now that Joe Biden will be, in fact, the 46th president of the United States of America?
Just some extended thoughts. Thanks for having me back on. This is some astonishingly trite ongoing theater that's been going on, conducted over the past week and really over the past few months. An election controversy of this scale, as your correspondent just said from Chicago, has not been seen since 20 years ago when the U.S. Supreme Court finally blocked any kind of further inquiry into whether or not the then incoming Bush administration stole the election, which they did. The shoe's clearly on the other political party's foot this time around, and by design, in my opinion, because stakes are similarly large nationally and geopolitically and geoeconomically, really. And there's something clearly initiatory about staging seeming birth pangs via supposedly rigorous election processes or lack thereof. It should be noted, just in the wider kind of step away from the controversies, it should be noted that Ronald Reagan left his two-term presidency at 77 years of age with early stages of dementia already kind of setting in, per his own son in the UK Guardian newspaper 9 years ago. And yet Biden is starting his first term at 77 with clear signs of incoherence and forgetfulness that until a month ago the corporate media itself took delight in ridiculing. No, there's something else afoot, and thus don't be surprised to see 56-year-old definitively establishment compliant Kamala Harris take over the POTUS duties before too long. It doesn't mean that weekend at Bernie's like Biden won't continue to be propped up in front of cameras. It's just that the production could lose some luster and tip off the masses as to the man seemingly behind the curtain. Regardless, Trump's quote-unquote madman scripted four-year acting job clearly served as a scare tactic to foreign leaders, alongside also being tactical distraction domestically for tens of millions of impoverished Americans who'd fallen into the hole since the 2008 financial crisis. The real rate of unemployment currently is north of 30%. And there are wider debt, credit, and banking crises reapproaching, with a technocratic monetary regime replacement getting underway globally via this quote-unquote Great Reset being pushed so hard by the World Economic Forum, which, by the way, ultimately is run by the same folks who decide which candidates in the U.S. get past primary elections. Biden now essentially serves as the modern FDR figure to Trump's Herbert Hoover figure from 88 years ago. The economy will thus continue barreling into a second Great Depression while global conflicts worsen, and with the same neocons, the same neoconservatives running policies between Washington, London, the other Five Eyes, and even Brussels. The full spectrum dominance which Donald Rumsfeld referenced over 16 years ago isn't limited to any political party per se, and is certainly not over.
And Pi, so you're saying things have transpired the way they have by design. To design what? You kind of alluded to it. You're saying that in a way this was all done to everything has transpired the way it has to remove Donald Trump and put a deep state guy or gal back in to the White House.
I mean, who's arguing that Donald Trump wasn't deep state or isn't deep state?
That's the point I wanted to actually get to. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's the whole. If you actually look critically at who has advised Trump consistently over his one term, foremost being, the godfather, for lack of a better term, of U.S. and European and Atlanticist foreign policy, Henry Kissinger, despite or maybe because of his age in his late 90s at this point, nevertheless taking on the role of mentor to Donald Trump and to his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and technically being old enough to be Trump's own father, but bringing a very trusted sense of kiss the ring to foreign policy and to this quote-unquote madman theory that I referenced earlier, as well as in past broadcasts with you folks. It was deployed 50 years ago by then Henry Kissinger as well for then President Richard Nixon against the North Vietnamese, against the Soviet Union. It's an old Machiavellian geopolitical trick, and it has domestic ramifications as well, then to scare away rioting liberals on campuses across the U.S. against the Vietnam War. And since Trump came in 4 years ago against people that are justifiably, visibly livid against not being able to traverse beyond the class that they had been trapped in since the '08 crisis essentially kicked off what at this point is 12 going on 13 years of systemic deflation and economic devastation. People in the suburbs wondering why there's all of a sudden like quadruple or quintuple the number of homeless across their otherwise manicured lawns, while not looking at the reality beyond just what the stock market says things are, beyond what the Wall Street Journal or their other corporate press dictate as far as true unemployment or inflation or GDP, or all the stats are completely tweaked. And thus this election facade, in many ways, is yet another in a series of tactical distractions to keep people from looking at things systematically, observing things historically. And it's not like there haven't been controversies. My American hero, my favorite U.S. president, was John F. Kennedy. And Jack Kennedy's own father, essentially, it's not controversial, it's codified history at this point, stole the election of 1960, utilizing various forces in Chicago and elsewhere. And that was nevertheless stamped Camelot for the posterity and history. So why, and then 2000, as I'd referenced earlier, it's just like, it could not have been any more blatant, the politicized nature of the highest court in the land, U.S. Supreme Court, intervening in something that actually should have had the light of day within the judicial process, thus tweaking jurisprudence permanently. And here, regardless of how many lawsuits there are, I mean, this will just conveniently be brushed under the rug in order for the same sort of policies to proceed, albeit with a new brand name, a la Obama for 8 years and Clinton for 8 years prior to Bush.
Thank you, Pi.